Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name's Bria, and I love everything books. And today's a special day. Happy Valentine's Day. I thought today was the perfect day to share all of my clean romance recommendations. So without further ado, let's get into it. What better way to get into this video than with my favorite romance author of all time, honestly, probably even my favorite author of all time, and that's Kiera Cass. She has 10 books and I have read all of them and they're all so good. All of them are romance books. Let's get started. Also, side note, all of these books are 5 stars unless I specify otherwise, but pretty much this entire list are 5 stars of mine, so. Anyways, let's get started. Kiera Cass's first book is The Siren. I love this book so much. Obviously, I love all these books. The Siren is about this girl named Katherine. I honestly don't know if I'm saying that right. Well, she's a siren, and basically the ocean is, I can't say that. That's a spoiler. It's about her and the other sirens, and they're basically enslaved to the ocean, and they're sirens, so their entire job is to feed the ocean, if you get what I'm saying. But along the way, she meets someone, and oh my gosh, they are the cutest couple ever. So it follows their journey of finding each other and meeting for the first time, and then a whole wild adventure that happens. But it's so good. I highly recommend it. The next books that Kiera Cass published, you've probably heard of. It's the Selection series. Basically, it's The Bachelor, but royalty is the best way to put it. And there's 6 books in the series, which is crazy. The first 3 follow America Singer, and she's basically like one of the contestants on The Bachelor is the best way to put it. And it's her story of like living in the palace and like being a part of this competition. Happily Ever After is the 4th one, and that is a compilation of short stories all throughout the trilogy. And then the last 2 books are following America's daughter and her process of basically like the Bachelorette. It's super good. The romance is super cute and sweet. It also has kind of like some dystopian elements as well as like some uprising and stuff in there too. So highly recommend. Also, The Heir I did rate a 4-star. I don't know, it just felt kind of slow compared to the rest of the books, but overall it's a 5-star series. Next up is The Betrothed and the Betrayed. So this is her duology, and this one is again with like royalty, kings and queens, and like palaces and rivalries between countries, and it's so good. Oh my goodness. It's also really sad. The main character, why am I blanking on her name? I genuinely can't remember her name. Anyways, but she goes through some crazy difficult stuff, but it's so good, and it's definitely like a very similar vibe to The Selection, just in like and there's a lot of like royals and politics and stuff like that, but it's super good. Highly recommend it. And last but not least, her 10th book, and this one's actually my favorite. It's her most recent one, 1,000 Heartbeats. This one I love so much. It came out in, I want to say 2022, so hopefully that means she's releasing one soon, because it's so good. And I talked about this one in my last video, because I read this in my last video. But oh my gosh, I love this book so much. It's so cute. It's enemies to lovers, which is everyone's favorite for a reason. And you can really tell by the tabs, because all the purple ones are romance and then pink is just like quotes, but you can really tell by the tabs that like it's enemies to lovers. This story follows Princess Annika and her story like with her kingdom and being the princess, and also with another kingdom that's at war with them. And she's a super strong character. Everyone expects her to just be like the classic princess, but she really stands up for who she is and what she believes in. And it's just so good. You have to read it. It's so good. The next author that I love, I actually just found last year, and that's Katherine Center. I've read 2 of her books, and they're both 5 stars. I literally have like all of her books on my TBR that I want to read eventually. They're so good. While Kiera Cass was more of like medieval fantasy type romance, Katherine Center is more of a modern day romance writer, like kind of like literary fiction romance. So the first book that I read of hers is The Rom-Commers. It's so cute. I actually bought this book in Canada when I was there on a missions trip. I've been trying to buy books. Like whenever I go somewhere, I buy a book as a souvenir, and the cover is just so pretty, and it has sprayed edges. So I was like, you're coming home with me. And this is actually her newest release, which I didn't realize, although she's coming out with a new book really soon. But this is her newest one that's out. It follows 2 screenwriters, Emma and Charlie. That's them on the cover. And Emma's an up-and-coming screenwriter. Has not had her big break yet, and Charlie is like the #1 screenwriter in the world. It's also enemies to lovers. They're writing the script for a rom-com together, and Charlie no longer believes in love, so Emma's trying to get him to believe in love so they can properly write a rom-com. And it's just so cute. He's so grumpy and she's so sunshine. That trope is so good. I love it so much. In this book, there is one scene that gets close to being a spy scene, but nothing happens. So just, if you get there and you're like, nothing's gonna happen. But yeah, I love this book so much. They're so cute. Next up is Hello Stranger. This book is so good. I mean, obviously that's why it's on this list. What's her name? Hold on. I forget. What is her name? I literally forget every character's name after I read the book. It's a problem. Sadie. Her name's Sadie. Anyways, Sadie's a portrait artist, so she paints people for a living, and basically one day she gets into an accident and she wakes up and she has facial blindness, so she can now no longer know who people are because she literally cannot see their face. That's literally her job. Literally rests on her being able to see people's faces. So it's her story of trying to navigate life when she literally can't recognize people, and it's so interesting. And the plot twist, the entire book, I was so confused as to what was happening. I was like, this makes no sense. There's so many people, and there's like these 2 guys, and like what? I didn't even know what she was doing the whole time. And I got to the end of the book and my jaw was on the floor. I was like, everything makes so much sense now. Like, it was so good. Literally the next day I reread it because I was like, I need to reread now knowing everything that you find out at the end, and it makes so much more sense once you know what's happening. Yeah, it's so good. I love it. Next up is a few books that aren't specific to an author, but just random little romance books that I found that I love. And the first one is Lady of a Thousand Treasures. This book I randomly thrifted. I was at my library's book sale, and I always go to the Christian romance section, and I found this one, and it was just a really cute cover, and I think Goodreads had it rated pretty high or something. I don't know, I just picked it up, and I love this book so much. I don't know if you can tell by how many tabs are in here. You can't really see the clear ones, but there's so many tabs in there. But this follows Eleanor, and she and her family have an antiques business, and she's like really skilled at being able to tell what's real and what's fake. So while she's dealing with like antiques and trying to figure out what's real and fake, she's also dealing with people and trying to figure out what's real and fake there. It's really good. The romance is so cute and innocent. It takes place in like the late 1800s, so it's just a really cute, old-fashioned, like the love is just so wholesome. It's so cute. So highly recommend. One of my favorite books of last year for sure. Next up is The Second Chance Year. This is actually the first book of the month book that I ever got. It was part of the holiday collection. And funny enough, this character is also named Sadie. So I didn't think that was a common name, but I read 2 romance books with a main character named Sadie. So there's that. But basically, Sadie goes through like the worst year of her life, and so she wishes to redo it, and somehow that wish comes true, so she gets to relive the worst year of her life, but she makes different decisions. She's really struggling with, maybe I didn't want to change that year, maybe that was for the better, or maybe new year is better. And it's really cool, like magical realism, but I thought it was really cute, and she learned a lot of really good lessons in this book. I would say trigger warning for SA though. It's not anything super graphic, but if that is something that triggers you, maybe don't read this book, but overall definitely a good read. Next up is the Twilight series. I'm sure you've heard all about the series and know everything about it. It's a classic for a reason. People love it. And I will say in the last book, there is a closed door scene, so if that's something you don't want to read, then maybe you could just skip that book and read the first few. It is closed door though, so nothing really happens on the page. If you aren't familiar with the story, it follows Bella and Edward. Edward is a vampire and Bella's human, so it's kind of a hard dynamic when your boyfriend's a vampire. Definitely a pretty good book. I rated it 5 stars because I enjoyed it. It's not like top tier book, but still pretty good and fun read. Next up is April Showers. This is a book by a pretty small author. Her name's Brianna Swan. I just randomly found her on Instagram a few years back, and she published this book, and so I bought it. It's really good. I did give it a 4 star, just because, I don't know, I didn't like the writing style too much, but it is still a pretty solid book. It talks a lot about mental health and like the struggles of what going through that looks like, and the romance is super cute. It is a Christian romance, so like there's a summer camp. The characters talk about God and prayer a ton. The romance is just super cute, so definitely recommend that one. So those are all my favorite clean romances. but I thought I would add at the end other books that I really love that aren't necessarily romance books, but they have a subplot of romance in them. There's quite a bit of those too. I've actually found that when looking for clean romances, it's easier to find a book that's maybe like fantasy or dystopian with a subplot of romance, because the emphasis isn't on that romance. It's usually clean because that's not the purpose of the book. So a lot of my favorite book couples are actually not from romance books, but they're from fantasies or dystopians or other genres like that. First up, one of my favorite authors, Veronica Roth. Divergent was actually one of the books I vividly remember reading in middle school, and that's like one of the books that really got me into reading. Tris and Four are just the cutest couple ever. They're definitely very like rugged, and they're dauntless if you've read the book, you know. But they're just such a cute couple, and they go through so much together. And if you read the series, you know the end of Allegiant. It makes me mad every time I think about it, which is quite often. But them as a couple is just so cute, and I love them so much. And then also by Veronica Roth is Carve the Mark and the Fates Divide. And this is another dystopian. Basically, there's like these two kingdoms, and there's prophecies of the princes and princesses, and there's like magic and like trust and betrayal, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. It's like also kind of like a fantasy dystopian that I describe it. And again, romance isn't really the focus of the series, but there definitely is a romance that like blossoms in it, and it's super, super cute. So definitely recommend that one too. And honestly, those are the only books by Veronica Roth that I've read, and I really want to read more because obviously with Divergent and Carve the Mark, every single one of those was a 5-star. So I think anything else by her would probably also be a 5-star. If you've read a Veronica Roth book and you liked it and it wasn't Divergent or Carve the Mark, let me know because I would love to read it. The next author is another author that I fell in love with in middle school, and that's Joelle Charbonneau. I don't know if that's how you say it, but she wrote the Testing trilogy, which I haven't met anyone ever who's read it. But to me, it's like if you mashed up Divergent and the Hunger Games, kind of. It's very similar to the Hunger Games in that there is this Hunger Games that occurs in the world, but the thing is nobody knows it exists, because basically the smartest kids from each of the towns get recruited to like go to university, and they go there and it's actually it's called the Testing. They get tested, but it's basically the Hunger Games, and either you pass or you die, and then your memories are wiped at the end. So like nobody in this society knows what's going on. So the trilogy follows Sia and her journey through the testing, and then also Thomas and his journey, basically them going through it together and the bond they make through that. And they're so adorable. I love them so much. So if you like the Hunger Games, Divergent, those kind of books, then you definitely would really love the Testing trilogy. And then also by the same author is Dividing Eden and Eden Conquered. And I just recently read this past year, and I had thought I'd read it earlier. I don't know, it sounded really familiar, and again, I read the Testing. So I thought I'd read it because it's by the same author, but I guess I hadn't. It's so good. It really reminds me of the Carve the Mark duology by Veronica Roth. So it's about this kingdom, and it follows the royal family of this kingdom. Within the family, there's twins, Karis and Andreas, and it's their story of being twins, basically like fighting for the throne. And there's so many plot twists and betrayal, and you don't know who to trust. And so the whole series, like every chapter, you feel like you're learning something new about the world, realizing you've been believing a lie for the entire book. And it's so good, and there is romance that blossoms between Karis and one of the side characters in the book, and that definitely happens more so in the second book, but I definitely recommend both of them. They're super good. And then finally, some other random books that are just by random authors. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I literally have the physical copies right here. But there's Dividing Eden and Eden Conquered. So good. Read them. Anyways, moving on to some other books that are just by random authors. But first up is The Hunger Games. Again, The Hunger Games is one of the books that I read like in middle school that really fostered my love for reading. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but it follows Katniss and her story of going through the Hunger Games and then everything after that. And there's 2 boys in her life, so I'm trying to figure out like which one she's gonna choose. And you probably know which one it is. I'm sure you've read the books or watched the movies, but so good. I didn't include The Ballad of Songbird and Snakes because it's not really a romance. I mean, there's a little bit there. Like, if you read the series, definitely read Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, but like not for the romance. And then Sunrise on the Reaping coming out. I'm so excited. I'm going to be doing so many videos on that. But that's The Hunger Games. And then last but not least is The Waterfire Saga. This is another book that I remember reading when I was little. It's about like a bunch of mermaids and like all the kingdoms that are in the sea and they're at war. And it's definitely like a fantasy. But again, there is a romance that pops up in it and it's so good. And I did rate Deep Blue, which is the first book, a 4-star, just because, I don't know, it was kind of slow, but it was really just setting the story up for the next 3 books, and I gave all those 5 stars. So definitely, if you like mermaids and fantasy and high stakes, then definitely read it. It's really good. And those are all my favorite clean romances. Comment if I missed any. I'm sure there's so many more out there, and I am always looking for new ones to read, because romance is one of my favorite genres ever, and it is so hard to find good clean romances, because every romance book today, well, not all of them, but like the good majority of ones that are coming out are just like an excuse to read spice, and I'm like, that it's not for me, thank you very much. So if you have any that you love, please comment them down below, because I would love to read them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next video. I am so excited for my next video, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be really good. Happy Valentine's Day, and see you guys later.